Yes, okay. So I've started to record this session for the benefit of those who cannot make it. So yeah, thank you all for joining and for making it on time. So today's presentation is really going to focus on assets. And when I talk assets, I talk personal finance. So it's not really to try to argue or debate with the accountants. I'm one accountant, but I know there are some things that we may never agree with the accountants when it comes to personal assets. So I hope you'll stick with me right to the end, and then we'll learn the different kind of assets that are there, the properties of the assets, and all the other exciting things that you probably did not know. So maybe just to get us started, I have a question that I put here, and you can put your answers in the chat box. What assets do you currently have? So I just want you to type in the chat box what assets you currently have. So you don't necessarily have to have the right definition of assets, but from your own understanding and with what you have in your own household, or maybe at your farm or wherever it is, I just want you to type in the screen what assets you believe you have. So let me see. Okay, I'm seeing some answers right there. Thank you, Blantina. She has cows. Yeah, please put in the chat box. Sydney, thank you. 2 hectares piece of land and a small lorry. Yes. Okay, so those are assets. Keep bringing them in, okay? And then we'll look at those at some point, but please keep sending. I want to know what assets you currently have. There we go. So moving on, I just want to help us unlearn some lessons or some habits that we have learned all the while growing up from preschool right until adulthood. You know, there are some lessons that we have learned unconsciously, some of them, you know, or subconsciously. We learn and we continue to share those lessons with our children as well. And one of this lesson, I think everyone had it, was you have to work hard at school so that you can get a good job and earn money. And that's what we would all do, you know, at school. You would work very hard because you want to get a good job. That's just how it was. And we would know that the good job is to earn money. And for myself, I really wanted to be a chartered accountant because I was told that that's the highest level you can ever get to in the financial world. But yeah, exciting things those were. And one of the equations that I learned, I'm a numbers person, but this is not complicated at all, says Y is equal to X, where Y is income and X is expenses. Basically, what this is saying is all the money you get should be spent, right? So now you'd find that all the money you're earning is finished at the end of the month. So we get back to another lesson that you have to work harder so that you can have more money. So how do you work harder? You probably put in more hours at work, or you have to work more than one job so that you can get more money, or you work harder, you get a promotion, and then you earn more. So the lesson we are learning is that we have to work hard for money, instead of a lesson that we have to get our money to work hard for us, you know. And so this is what assets do. They make our money work for us. We'll get into that very soon. And one of the habits also, and especially because I went through it, is that as you get to earn this more money, it's like we allow our money, or I allowed my money to be tied up in trying to maintain an expensive lifestyle. So I would get to a point where I say, no, when I'm like this, I don't get into combis. I would rather get a taxi. because I'm a CA, I can't be seen in a combi, things like that. So of course, expensive lifestyles mean you need more money. And what that ended up doing to me is I ended up in debt, because you have to borrow to maintain a certain lifestyle if you cannot afford it anymore. And so it creates an income and expenditure cycle. You earn, you spend, you earn and you spend. So it doesn't matter. Now the last equation, you find that maybe you double your income, but subsequently you also double your expenses, or you triple your income, you also triple your expenses. And now on top of that, there are liabilities. I think for those who were on the Zoom meeting we had on cash flow patterns, you'll understand this one. Quite exciting. So those lessons we have to unlearn those lessons, but also we have to learn new lessons. And the lesson is that having a job is not a bad thing at all. A job is actually a good thing because it creates cash flow. You know, that's how you have a continuous flow of cash into your life when you have a job, especially if it's a steady job. But unfortunately, we become so comfortable in our jobs that we forget that probably one day we will retire, or maybe we will be sucked out of the jobs. So having a job should not stop you from investing in assets or buying assets. And one thing I want to emphasize is that money is a tool. The money that we get from our jobs, the money that we get, we did the streams of income last month. And so the money that we get is not the end goal, but we use it to buy the assets. So you see why having a job is not a bad thing at all. So money is a tool. It allows us, or it enables us to make choices. So tonight you can choose to have KFC, or you can choose to just drink tea with muffins. You know, it becomes a choice that money can allow you to make. With money, you can buy assets, and you can also build wealth. Now, what is an asset? I just want to get to this part, because it's very important that we understand what assets are. And an asset, and remember, I'm saying we are not going to base this on any accounting standard. We are looking at our own personal finances. So when we talk of an asset, it's something that makes money flow back into your life. Assets are the only things that create wealth. So you can have more money, but if you are not buying assets, we go back to that equation where Y is equal to X, and that's it. But we want assets because they keep generating money more, like cash flow way after. And below, you can see I've actually highlighted the properties of an asset. So for an asset to be called an asset, you should be able to own it. I don't know who's not muted. Please mute. There's some background noises. So it has to be something that can be owned. So there's an element of ownership. Can you own that thing, you know, that asset? If it's an asset, is there ownership? And most probably we tick this box that yes, it's mine, it's my cow, or yes, it's my house, or yes, it's my lorry, you know, things like that. So assets, they should be owned and can be eventually turned into cash and cash equivalents. We look at economic value. Does your asset have economic value, and can it be exchanged or sold? That's another important property of an asset. And lastly, we're saying, is it a resource or resource? Assets, they generate economic benefits naturally. So they create cash flow, or probably they can serve you in taxes by giving you tax credits and so on and so on. So if it does not meet any one of those, the criteria, then it's not an asset. So an asset, most importantly, should generate economic benefits. And this morning I was just chatting, I'm not sure if Elikan is here, and he was saying to me, but my house appreciates in value. So probably in 10 years time, my house is worth more than what it cost me in the first place. So yes, there is an element of appreciation, though not really a property of an asset, but if it does appreciate in value, that becomes the cherry on top. I hope that is clear. But assets should be generating as cash flow. And when we invest, we are not really investing for appreciation, but for cash flow, because we want money. As we said, money is the tool. That's the tool we want. So here I have just now tried to classify the different classes that we have of assets. For the past, I think last week, yes, I was talking of cash, where we mentioned that cash is the king. You know, like we said, cash is king, but of course there are exceptions to that. So cash represents liquidity and power to buy anything. And normally, especially in the Zimbabwean market today, if you are holding cash, you'd find that you can easily negotiate and buy some things. So it really represents power for you to buy anything. We also have a certain class of assets called fixed interest. And fixed interest, we are talking of when you lend money to someone, the interest that comes. So we are expecting, I'll get into detail in all of those, but you're expecting some income to be coming at a certain time every month. So maybe on the second Monday, every second Monday, you're expecting money to come. That's fixed interest. And it's normally because you have lent money either to a person, to a bank, to the government. So if there are government bonds, for example, you would have lent money to the government. And then we have shares or equities. This is representing ownership of a business. So it could be your own business that you own, then it is an asset. Or you could be having some stake in another company. Those as well can be considered equity. Then we have, I think, the most popular, which is real estate. Real estate, this is now ownership of physical space. It could be land, houses, things like that. And then lastly, we will look at commodities, where you own physical goods. And this is where the cows are coming in, livestock, metals, precious stones, oils, things like that. And one important thing I wanted to just bring to your attention is that, yes, we will have these 5 classes, but they all attract what we say different levels of reward and risk. I think you have heard it, that high risk, high return. And so that's how it is. With cash, it has very minimal risk. It's very, when you put $100, say, for example, in your safe, you will still find it as $100. It could be a different case in Zimbabwe. If you put it there, you may find it's less. But normally when you put your cash somewhere, you'll still find it as it is. The buying power is something else, but that's what we say, the risk is very low, but the reward as well is low. So you put 100, you still get 100. There's no interest, nothing. Government bonds, as we go on, it's like that. Commodities, high risk and low return. Low return, not as low as cash. You can expect to get something. Property, you see, as we go up. So this is just to help you as you're investing in the different assets. You just need to be aware that each asset type carries a level of risk and also brings some rewards. Okay, and then now I learned quite a lot. I was studying the story of Solomon, King Solomon in the Bible, and some claim he is the richest man who ever lived. And I think if we were to put things, like if we were to just make everything constant, ceteris paribus, as they would say, if everything else is constant, if we compare maybe is it Elon Musk, the richest man now, and Solomon, they would probably be just, he would be the richest man still. Okay, so that's what I was excited about. And when I was doing my study of King Solomon, I said to myself, what kind of assets did he have? And probably we will learn a few lessons from there. So as you will see, his assets were inflation resistant. If I take you back to this slide, The cash and the government bonds, these two, they are prone to inflation because they are more liquid than the rest of these assets. And you'd find that the assets that King Solomon had were inflation resistant, and we will go through those. So number one, he did have commodities or physical goods. I was reading from 1 Kings 10 verse 25, and it says, year after year, everyone who visited brought him gifts of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. And so it just helps to explain commodities. So people would visit him and would bring commodities. So yes, I remember specifically the example of the cow. So animals fall under commodities. Secondly, we look at fixed income. And as I was explaining, fixed income is more of debt financing, when you lend someone and then you get your interest every month or at a fixed period. It's not necessarily to say it's a fixed amount, but it's a fixed period that you receive your money. So those are examples: bonds, treasury bills, savings accounts. And Solomon had something like that. When I looked at 1 Kings 4:21, so NLT is the New Living Translation, says Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates River all the way, and the conquered peoples of those lands sent tribute money to Solomon and continued to serve him throughout his lifetime. So you see, the man, besides having all those commodities, he also received tribute money. So it would come probably at a fixed time throughout his lifetime. And I also saw in 1 Kings 12 verse 4, where it says, your father was a hard master. It says, lighten the harsh labor demands and heavy taxes that your father imposed on us. So his father is referring to David. So they're saying, just lessen it. I'm sure he had continued with that exercise. And so there's heavy taxes that he was also getting from them. And they said, then we will be your loyal subjects. So you can imagine having to pay taxes every month, you see. So that's how fixed income works, is that every month you are receiving something. So every month your assets send to you money. Okay, then we move on. I have to make sure that I'm sticking to my time. But so moving on, we have equity. Equity, and this is where we said it's owning, maybe business ownership, and it could be a share. This picture just helped me to explain that, because this whole cake, it could be yours, right? That's business ownership, or you could just earn a small piece, and that's probably stocks or index funds, you know, or maybe it's a startup. Someone is starting a business, and you just say, okay, I'll also invest maybe 20% of what you want, and then you'll be getting interest. So that's equity. And I saw that Solomon also had the same. So 1 Kings 10:22 says the king had a fleet of trading ships. You see, he had that. And every 3 years, the ships returned loaded with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. These are also animals to come back loaded with commodities. And the same and the same. And I loved Ecclesiastes 11 verse 1, which was saying, invest your money in foreign trade, and one of these days you will make a profit. These were wise sayings from this man, the richest man who ever lived. Fourthly, I saw that he also had the real estate. And real estate, as we mentioned, is the physical space. So I saw that in Song of Solomon 8:11, it says Solomon has a vineyard at Baal Hamon, which he leases out to tenant farmers. So you see, it's not just a vineyard which is just sitting, and a vineyard is like a farm. So it's a farm actually, but it's a farm probably of grapes. So he leases out to tenant farmers, and each of them pays 1,000 pieces of silver for harvesting its fruit. So you can imagine how much this guy had, you guys. I think he really was the richest man. He was the richest man. So I loved this picture because it was also explaining what real estate is. And what was also so amazing for me is that air rights. You know, if you own something above the land or underground, you can actually own that, and it's also part of real estate. And lastly, for me, this one, when I was reading, it was like, because you are your greatest asset. You will not find it on those 5 that I mentioned, but I believe you are your greatest asset, and you need to also invest in yourself. When I looked at King Solomon, we hear that 1 Kings 4:34, from all nations, people came to listen to his wisdom. They sent ambassadors from all over the world to hear of his wisdom. And when they came, they would not come empty-handed. If you look at the Queen of Sheba, we hear she brought caravans with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold. Again, she was bringing commodities. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how, this was all of Solomon's wealth, you know, assets. He was investing in assets. So in a nutshell, again, we're saying assets is what you own. And I think we explained the 3 properties of assets. So it could be commodities, real estate, equity, all those things, you know, on the scale, they should tip the scale, it should be heavier. We should have more assets than we have liabilities. And liabilities, we are looking at things like your overdrafts, your loans. You know, we do not want to have more liabilities, but would rather have more assets than liabilities. And when that happens, we say you have a positive net worth. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think this was my presentation, and I just want to hear from you guys, which one from all the asset classes that I've spoken about, which one do you think is the low-hanging fruit? Which one would you say, this I can easily get into? I actually want to see the chart, because there were examples. Okay, house, motor vehicles, money, chickens, that was Alan. And then the government bond, shouldn't that be at the higher risk, especially in the Zim context? I agree with you, Sydney, on the government bond, that the Zim, especially in Zimbabwe, as I said, you know, cash is risky, and then bonds are also risky, but not as risky as the cash. But yes, in the Zim context, because what happens is there are fixed rates. They have fixed rates. You remember I said fixed, there's fixed income, which is it comes every month, probably at the same time every month. But if it's the fixed rate, if that rate is fixed and it's a debt instrument, then yes, very high risk, very high risk. So yeah, my presentation, that was just a general comment, but yes, putting it into context, it's very different. So I want to hear from you guys. Which one do you think is a low-hanging fruit? Which one would you go for? And from what we have been saying, do you think you own assets? Actually, I think most of you do own assets. And as I said, they should be bringing you, they should be generating economic value. But for those who have not yet responded, or do you think there's at least something you feel, this I can easily do and start diversifying my asset portfolio? You can unmute if you want, or you can type in the chat box. Sydney, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I think you answered it quite well. I was just looking at the context in Zimbabwe. Yeah, it's a bit tricky, especially with the changes in legislature overnight, things like that, yeah. And the uncertainty in the business sense. So yeah, I just felt it could be one of those risky ones.
Yeah, especially government bonds. But also, I think in the income, when we did the cash flow patterns, I think we spoke of peer-to-peer lending. It could be less riskier than lending to government. But it's just to do your research before you dive in, right? Yeah. Thanks for that. Blantina, thank you. She's saying, I loved lessons from King Solomon. Thank you. Indeed, for me, they were also very eye-opening. And you know, like the last one of investing in yourself, because really each and every one of us has some potential. You know, you have some expertise that you have that people are willing to pay for, to learn from you. It could be something from maybe that you actually do at your job, or it could be how to rear chickens. Alan, if someone wants to know, and then you say, no, I'm having lessons on rearing chickens, or they could be the roadrunner chickens, things like that. So yeah, we invest in ourselves, we read books, we go and further our studies at school even. So yeah, we have exactly 3 minutes left, so I hope I can still get those questions coming. Sydney says, reminds me of Og Mandino, who said, I am the greatest gift to the world. It's so true. I agree with you. The greatest gift to the world. You are the greatest gift to the world. Thanks for that. Yeah. Any more comments, questions before we wrap up? Okay. Looks like we have actually made it on time. So thank you so much, guys, for joining in. We will meet again in our next Zoom session. Let me just also try to just acknowledge everyone who's here. I see Spirit. Spirit, thank you. Amanda. SSP, this should be Sepo, I think. Thank you so much. So have yourselves a lovely remainder of the weekend, and have a lovely week ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and have a great last part of the weekend.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.